Okay, so picture this. It's December 31st, 1999. Russia's in a mess. The economy's in the tank, corruption's through the roof, and Boris Yeltsin, the guy running the show, is so deep in scandals he decides to step down early. That's when Vladimir Putin steps in. This guy was kind of an unknown back then, you know? Just this former KGB officer who'd worked his way up through the ranks. But now, boom, he's the acting president of Russia. And here's the thing, Putin's timing was pretty lucky. Right after he took power, two big things happened on the international stage that basically gave him a free boost. First, there was 9/11. Yeah, the US got hit with those terrible attacks, and suddenly the whole world, including Russia, was talking about terrorism instead of geopolitics. George W. Bush, who was president at the time, was like, hey, let's work together on this, and Putin was all in. He even called Bush right after the attacks to offer support. Fun fact, he was actually the first foreign leader to do that. Apparently, he called so early that the Secret Service hadn't even fully secured the situation yet. Pretty wild, right? Anyway, this whole war on terror thing gave Russia some breathing room. Suddenly, they weren't the big bad enemy anymore. Instead, the US was focused on Al-Qaeda and the Middle East, which meant less pressure on Moscow. And then there was oil. Oh man, oil prices went through the roof in the early 2000s. By 2008, they were over $147 a barrel. Russia's economy, which was basically running on oil and gas exports, got a massive windfall. Putin took that cash and started cleaning house. He cracked down on the oligarchs who'd been running wild in the 90s, invested in infrastructure, and boosted living standards. By the end of his first decade in power, Russia's GDP had grown sixfold. Sixfold. That's pretty impressive, no matter how you slice it. And people noticed. Russians were like, wow, this guy's actually turning things around. He was riding high. It was like he could do no wrong. But, you know, international politics is tricky. Just when you're on top of the world, that's when things start to get dicey. Fast forward to 2009, Barack Obama becomes president, and things start to shift. Obama was all about ideology, you know, promoting democracy, human rights, that kind of thing. He backed movements like the Arab Spring in 2010 and the Ukrainian Revolution in 2014. For Putin, this was bad news. Really bad news. See, Russia's whole deal is stability. Putin's this guy who's built his reputation on being the strongman, the one who's going to keep the country together no matter what. And then here comes Obama, pushing for these color revolutions in places that are right in Russia's backyard. Putin saw this as a direct threat. I mean, he probably thought, if they're doing this in Ukraine, what's stopping them from trying it here? But here's the thing, while Russia was flexing its military muscles, Putin was also playing a longer game with Europe. You've heard of Nord Stream, right? Those big pipelines pumping natural gas from Russia to Europe? Yeah, those were a huge part of Putin's strategy. By 2021, Nord Stream 2 was ready to go, and Europe was more dependent on Russian energy than ever. This gave Putin a lot of leverage. You can't exactly take a hard line against someone when they're keeping your lights on. So on February 24th, 2022, he invades Ukraine. The plan? A quick, decisive war. Take Kiev, install a pro-Russian government, and be done with it. Easy, right? Oh no. Ukraine fought back with everything they had. And suddenly, Putin's quick war turned into this long, grinding conflict. So yeah, where does this leave Putin? He's still in power, but it's getting tougher to keep that iron grip. Domestically, people are feeling the pain from sanctions and the economic slowdown. Sure, state media is working overtime to keep folks in line, but how long can that last? Internationally, Russia's more isolated than it's been in decades. They've got China and a few other countries willing to do business, but that's not enough to make up for losing Europe and the West. And with Ukraine getting stronger thanks to Western support, the war's becoming a slow-motion disaster for Russia. Putin's options? Honestly, none of them look great. You could try to escalate the war, but that's a massive gamble. You could look for a way out, but how do you sell that as a win to your people? And if the economy keeps tanking or public discontent boils over, well, even a strong man like Putin might find himself in trouble. But let's zoom out for a second. This isn't just about Putin. It's about the direction Russia takes as a country. Do they double down on isolation and authoritarianism? Or do they find a way to rebuild and re-engage with the world? Honestly, it's hard to say. The stakes are sky high, not just for Russia but for the whole world. This isn't just some regional conflict. It's a fight that's reshaping global politics, economies, and alliances. And well, it's reshaping how we think about power and influence in the 21st century. So yeah, this story is far from over.